Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is award-winning investigative reporter Bob Mackin. He's also the publisher of TheBreaker.News, his website, TheBreaker.ca. Welcome back to the show, Bob.
Thank you.
The Peter German money laundering report on BC's casinos. Could they have been more obvious that they were accepting literally hockey bags full of money every night?
Yeah, this is quite a shocking report in some ways and others not. After so many months of the build-up of waiting for this report to finally be released on June 27th, we got to read it. And the big question now is, what will the consequences be? Will any heads roll? So far, no heads are rolling. We did find out that the general manager of the Gaming Policy and Enforcement Branch, John Mazur, has left his post. David Eby, the Attorney General, was quite emphatic that it was not related to this, but didn't say what it was related to. However, he kept BC Lottery Corporation CEO Jim Lightbody in his job, and various other executives at BC Lottery Corporation in their jobs, and didn't hear of any other people asked to walk the plank anywhere else in government. A little bit disappointing, especially after the history from 2007 when there was a report by the ombudsperson looking at how lottery retailers were gaming the system and were coincidentally winning too many lottery jackpots from their own lottery stores. That was called fraud by the ombudsperson, and the magnitude of that problem and magnitude of the victims of that was minuscule when compared to this scandal, which involves money laundering at casinos that we are now told that there is evidence that it involves the drug underworld, that there's drug gangs from Mexico, Colombia, and China that are involved in this mix, and of course money ending up outside of casinos once it's laundered through casinos into the local real estate industry. So we've got a very unsettling situation where there are casualties. You can look at homeless people and say that that person might be a casualty of the casino scandal, and you can look at the terrible numbers that have come from the fentanyl crisis and the number of deaths from the fentanyl crisis, and asked, well, how many of those were people that were victims of this whole casino money laundering scandal? There are victims that this is a matter of life and death. It wasn't so much a matter of life and death back in 2007 when the ombudsperson in her report found the fraud happening at lottery retail. And when that happened, that report caused the BC Lottery Corporation Board of the day to then fire the CEO of BC Lottery Corporation, Vic Polishchuk, who eventually landed on his feet as an executive with Great Canadian Gaming. But nonetheless, there was accountability then. There is no accountability now. David Eby at the June 27th news conference when the report was released didn't indicate that there would be any more accountability. He seemed to be satisfied that there had been a change in government, that there had been some consequence, that those who were in power running the Lottery Corporation, the BC Liberals, is who he pointed to, are no longer government. So there is some accountability. The public replaced the government, replaced the BC Liberals. The NDP is now in power. The NDP is trying to say it's going to do a better job at keeping law and order in casinos. But I think that there was a lot of pressure on David Eby, a lot of pressure on the NDP to not go as far as they could have gone because of the interests at casinos. There are casino operators who are private companies, and some that are listed publicly, like Great Canadian, for instance, who are the ones that operate the casinos with the blessing of and in partnership with BC Lottery Corporation. And those casinos, their companies have made large political donations in years gone by. They're not allowed to do that anymore corporately. Certainly the executives can make those donations now under their own names. And there's also unions. BC GEU is the union that represents workers at Great Canadians Hard Rock Casino and also Great Canadians River Rock Casino. The BC GEU has been a very important donor to the NDP in years past. Of course, they can't donate like they used to because of the new laws, but I'm sure that they're going to encourage all their members, all the union members, to make donations on their own. And of course, union members have been key to NDP campaigns as not just donors, but also as volunteers in the past, knocking on doors and getting the vote out. So there are others there who may want to have a better, cleaner casino industry, but they didn't want the NDP perhaps to go as far as the NDP could have, because David Eby's already acknowledged that this is going to hit the bottom line. And of course, they don't want to scare all the people away from casinos, because casinos are an important funder of government programs. They bring in more than BC also brings in about $1.4 billion of profits every year, and much of that goes to general revenue. Some of that does go to dedicated accounts for health care, for instance, and also some of it does fund problem gambling or addiction programs, and some of it does fund the Gaming Policy Enforcement Branch. But just to get back to the Gaming Policy Enforcement Branch, that was the big revelation from Peter German's report, was that it's an ineffective regulator. It's essentially a captured regulator. It can't do its job. It's dysfunctional. It has a very toxic relationship with BC Lottery Corporation, which, funny enough, has some regulatory power of its own. So there's, stepping on toes that's constantly going on between the regulator and the regulated. I mean, there should be some healthy friction between whatever is regulated and whoever the regulator is. I mean, that's just the way it goes. But he said it went way too far, that these two agencies were in a constant battle, and that the Gaming Policy Enforcement Branch was part of the bureaucracy. It didn't have a chance to ever really be a proper regulator because it was always within government, not independent. So he's suggesting that there be a Crown Corporation set up to actually be the regulator, to be outside of government, outside the ministry that markets gambling. To have a proper regulator, he said that BC has to look at how things are structured in Nevada and how things are structured in Ontario. Use them as examples, and also when it comes to regulation, there's got to be better compliance and enforcement. And he said, hey, why not have a dedicated casino police squad? Because casinos that are spread out around the Lower Mainland and also in other parts of BC operate in a patchwork of municipalities. Some of those municipalities are RCMP policed municipalities, and some of those municipalities are municipalities with municipal police forces. But there should be a standard police agency that deploys officers into casinos on a round-the-clock basis that would help deter whatever crime there might be, but that would also help stop crime in the act, or even investigate crimes that do happen. Of course, this is something that the NDP is going to spend some time studying. Don't know how much this will actually cost to do either the Crown Corporation to replace the Gaming Policy Enforcement Branch, or to have a dedicated squad of casino police officers. These are the kind of things, though, that you've got to scratch your head and wonder why are we getting this recommendation now in 2018 when it was the early 2000s when the BC Liberals took over? Why didn't they have this done back then? Where there's been a lot of talk about what Rich Coleman did or didn't do around 2009 when the gambling intelligence squad from the RCMP was defunded, was shut down. Even after it warned that loan sharking was becoming money laundering, that organized crime was getting a foothold in casinos, you got to wonder, why did it even have to take to 2009 for that warning to be happening? Why wasn't there from the very start a police agency and proper independent regulator existing in BC casinos? and I think you've got to look at the page in Peter German's report where he talks about the new business plan that the BC Liberal government put together in 2004. 2004 is very interesting. That's 3 years after they won an election in 2001 on a platform that said that they were going to promise that there would be no expanded gambling. Well, guess what? They came into power and they expanded gambling. 2004, they put together a new business model for gambling in British Columbia, and they basically said under this new business model, it would be a franchise-type model, that it would expand, and it would also help double the revenue to provincial coffers. And that's also when they decided to change the euphemism. It was no longer going to be problem gambling. Problem gambling would become responsible gambling. So 2004 was the key year when everything seemed to have changed, and that's when the new order happened. And here we are suffering in British Columbia the byproducts of that, of money laundering and drug crimes, gang crimes, and of course the real estate industry, which has just gone bonkers.
Well, if people don't think that casino crime is violent crime, a woman who was known in the Chinese community as the Tiger Lady was found dead in the woods in Richmond, and they said, didn't you know she was a notorious loan shark at the River Rock? Yeah,
there have been a number of deaths over the years, and some of those deaths were actually in the report that the squad, the specialized RCMP squad, put to government, put to the RCMP, put to Rich Coleman back in 2009. And despite the warnings, they shut that squad down. But here's what happened. They realized back in 2015, 2016 that they had to bring back something like that, which they did. And now we've got the Joint Illegal Gaming Intelligence Team that was funded partly through the RCMP, partly through BCLC. It's connected to the Coordinated Forces Special Enforcement Unit, the anti-gang squad of the RCMP. So that was an admission that the Liberals really did make a bad decision in 2009, that they felt it was such a bad decision that they started to get intelligence reports in 2015 that they had to bring something like this back, but in many ways, too little, too late. Very too little, too late. That they had reports that there were 4 murders during a 3-year research period in that report that was given by the RCMP squad, and that they found 47 individuals who were identified in loan sharking activities, and those people included people who were go-betweens or runners. There was criminal rate of interest, loan sharking. There were victims that were reluctant to call the police, and others, they said, called the police as means of buying time from the loan shark. So there was something happening there that the BC Liberal government, which was not paying attention to at the time. This was a party that tried to cast itself over the years as being a party of law and order. And parties that are on the right side of the political spectrum tend to do that, to wrap themselves in law and order. The BC Liberals didn't do that so much in 2017 for reasons that we can only speculate. But now it's up to the NDP to clean this up, and we got to watch very closely in the months to come. The summer months may not bring much on this file because it's summer and government really doesn't act very diligently during the summer, especially when there could be other challenges on its plate. Forest fires, if the situation comes anywhere near like it was last summer. But we're going to be waiting to see if there's any results in the fall and asking some very serious questions of David Eby and others in the BC government this fall, because they have to start putting more of Peter German's recommendations into play. And part of that will be to show us what kind of plan they have to take those 2 key recommendations of a new independent regulator as a Crown Corporation standalone, as well as casino police. We'll need to see this fall to see what headway the BC NDP government will do on those files, and we'll see if David Eby does cave to public pressure, because a lot of people out there want a public inquiry. He said at the news conference they didn't do the public inquiry. They sacrificed some accountability on this in exchange for some transparency. we were finding out more about what went wrong and all the problems and how the system failed the public over several years through the Peter German report. We don't have the accountability that the public wants. Well, now the pressure is on David Eby's shoulders to deliver some of that accountability in some way, shape, or form. He's got to do it out of his own office in his own mystery. He can't wait for other agencies to do what they're doing. There are some police investigations which are in a stage of forwarding of the reports to Crown Counsel. There was one that was announced in June of 2017 where 9 people are arrested. I recently did a story about that, talking to the CFSEU, and they say that they're just finishing up their reports, and as they finish each portion of their report, their recommendations to Crown Counsel, it goes out the door to Crown Counsel. It could take a month, it could take 6 months before we have some charges, but they said that they're confident that they did a good investigation that can cause Crown Counsel to swear some charges. They say they had to do extra work to gather more evidence in the last year to make it that more thorough on the front end, because they say the courts and recent judgments demand more disclosure of investigations so that they can get those convictions, and that these matters don't last many, many years long. So I think we're going to see something on the policing side. So there's going to be some action perhaps in the fall. Some charges on this investigation or another investigation. You never know what else can pop up. You never know who else might come out of the woodwork. Other whistleblowers might come out, tell us more about what was going on behind the scenes at the casinos. The story is far from over.
We'll have more with Bob Mackin right after the break.
Arctic Star Exploration, operated by a team of proven mine finders, is focused on diamonds in Finland and the Northwest Territories of Canada. Work programs are underway in Finland and planned for Canada this summer. Arctic Star trades on the TSX Venture Exchange symbol ADD, on Frankfurt symbol 82A1, and the OTCQB symbol ASDZF. Please visit our website arcticstar.ca or call us at 604-689-1799.
Cypress Development Corp's flagship lithium project is located just east of Albemarle's Silver Peak mine in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. A 12-hole exploration drill program for lithium-enriched claystone on Cypress's 100% controlled properties is now underway. Cypress Development Corp trades on the TSX Venture Exchange symbol CYP, the Pink's CYDVF, and on Frankfurt's C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Mackin. Bob, have they released any of Gregor Robertson's, the mayor of Vancouver's, emails yet?
No, we're still waiting for that, and they're trying to kick it out of July and into August, and you can bet your bottom dollar they're going to try to kick it out of August into September and kick it out of September and October, so that Gregor Robertson isn't held accountable for what he was doing on his Google Mail, his Gmail. They're going to try. I'm not going to let them. I'm going to do whatever I can. I've already got complaints into the Office of the Information Privacy Commissioner. Gregor Robertson seems to be, in the same ballpark as Hillary Clinton was, and there's some serious questions about that. What was Gregor Robertson hiding from the prying eyes of people like me and others who do FOI requests? Why did he decide that even after the Information and Privacy Commissioner warned everyone, every public official in the province, whether they were a bureaucrat or a politician, Elizabeth Denham warned them all, 3 or 4 years ago, that you can't use and do not use private email systems, especially ones that could be running on servers in a foreign country. Do not use those. Use your government email for government business. And if you're going to use non-government email, if you're going to use personal email for a government business, well, be prepared for an FOI request, because the bureaucrats in those public bodies have to search and look for documents from those email accounts. I put the spotlight on City of Vancouver after finding in one FOI document release to me that Gregor Robertson was using a Gmail account, and I wanted to find out exactly how often he was using a Gmail account. And in one request, they told me there were about more than 5,000 pages of documents. That's the one where they tried to convince the Information Privacy Commissioner back in January to delay until after the election. They wanted 200 plus business days to delay it, which would have taken it into November. Well, luckily the Information Privacy Commissioner's office said you can have 100 days. Middle of June is your deadline, but they're trying to stick a handle around it. They're looking for every way possible to avoid the Information Privacy Commissioner and try to run out the clock, because I think there's not only negative information there about Gregor Robertson, who's not running again, but perhaps someone close to Vision who is running again, or people that were put in place by Vision. It might also tell us a story also about what was going on in the last 4 years since Vision won re-election in 2014. This could go all sorts of ways, especially when you've got a mayor of a city which itself, like casinos across British Columbia, that didn't get enough law and order and proper regulation of the BC Liberals. You can point to a lot of things in the city of Vancouver that during Gregor Robertson's years in office since 2008, a lot of things were given the blind eye treatment. Gregor Robertson is the chair of the police board. We've got casinos in Vancouver. We've got overpriced real estate in Vancouver. We've got people dying of fentanyl overdoses. A lot of serious questions about what he did and what he didn't do as mayor need to be asked before he leaves office. And he's going to leave office, interestingly enough, after the October 20th election with some more money in his pockets. Just like the rest of those city councillors who are not running again. Back in 2016, Vision Vancouver passed what is essentially a pension scheme. More than $103,000 will be paid out. That's at least $103,000 will be paid out based on the politicians who are not running again in this election. Gregor Robertson's one of them. And based on the formula of 1 week's pay for each year served in office, he'll be getting almost $29,000 as a departure bonus. That this was voted on by the politicians when they decided to also raise their pay by about 12% back in 2016. And this kind of tactic got a lot of attention when the Metro Vancouver board tried this earlier this year. It hasn't got as much attention yet, but I'm hoping it will be, because I wrote the story last week on the Breaker.news about this $29,000 retirement bonus for Gregor Robertson, especially when there's no cooling off period or post-employment requirements or restrictions for politicians at City Hall in Vancouver. The week Gregor Robertson or the week Gregor Robertson leaves office, and his successor in the mayor's chair is sworn in, he could go anywhere and do anything. He could go to work. He could go to Hollyhock if he wants and go back to the Tides Canada like he did before. He could find a way back to the juice company, which he used to be a shareholder of. You never know where he could go. He hasn't said where he's going to go, but there's nothing to stop him from going to work for one of Vision Vancouver's donors. There's nothing to stop him actually from going to work for a developer or a company that has a contract with City of Vancouver. There are very few checks and balances in our political system, and that's what's troubling. The revolving door of someone who can take what they learned in a powerful position in public office in municipal politics and then basically monetize that after leaving office. There are new regulations provincially for lobbyists and for people who are former politicians and former deputy ministers and senior staff. The NDP brought that in. That's new after so many years of having a revolving door and run the provincial side of things. But there's no new measures in municipal politics because there is no provincially mandated lobbyist registry. So Gregor Robertson theoretically could become a lobbyist. He could take that $29,000 that he's going to be paid by Vancouver taxpayers as this pension that he voted for himself. He could take that money actually and start his own company to lobby City Hall. That's all theoretical, but I'm just trying to paint a picture of what could happen because of the lack of checks and balances in the system. Jeff Miggs, when he left City Hall, left the Vision Vancouver caucus to become John Horgan's chief of staff last year, was the first to receive one of these length of service payments, is what they're called euphemistically. He was given more than $7,300 in his last paycheck for his time on city council. Others that'll be getting money this fall include Tim Stevenson and Raymond Louie. They were both elected in 2002. They're not going for a re-election. They're going to be each getting more than $19,000. Andrea Reimer and Carrie Jang, they've been on council with Vision Vancouver since 2008, and they'll be getting a little more than $13,000. And pulling up the rear is George Affleck, the NPA councillor. He'll be getting almost $9,700. There could be higher costs to Vancouver taxpayers depending on the remaining incumbents who are planning to run again if they lose, or if they, between now and Election Day, decide, no, it's not for them anymore. Well, they'll have their names added to it. The total hit to taxpayers in City of Vancouver could be as high as $146,000. But of course, there still is time if City Council wants to grow a conscience and take a second look at this, like Metro Vancouver did take a second look, and they rescinded that pension for Metro Vancouver directors. Well, if City Council members want to take a second look at this, there still is time. But again, it'll be up to the public to stamp the feet up and down and call in the talk shows and write letters to the editor and get active on social media to shine a light on this, on this these unnecessary payments that these politicians are getting. This transition payment, deferred remuneration is what it's officially called, when there are a lot of questions about how they got elected in the first place using big money donations, and also the performance while they were in office, because one of the major metrics of any city is the tax rate and the spending rate of City Hall. Taxes and spending in City of Vancouver have only gone up. This has not been a fiscally prudent council, and the fact that they voted themselves these raises and voted themselves the deferred remuneration, which is just a glorified pension plan, is something that should be of concern for all citizens who want a better governed city.
Are these one-time payments, or are they going to get this every year after they retire?
Well, these are one-time payments, but there's nothing stopping Gregor Robertson or any of the other politicians from deciding to run again in 2022. So they could always run again. But yeah, these are one-time payments that are only paid after the end of someone's term. If they're defeated or if they depart, whenever they depart, it's prorated for whenever they depart, as we saw what happened with Jeff Meggs. This could become the new norm. They commissioned a management consultant to look at this and to try to play the woe is me card that politicians work hard, long hours, and sometimes make unpopular decisions, and suddenly after they're defeated from office or they decide not to run again, their term is over, suddenly they got nothing to do. So they need this money to tide them over until their next gig, which I think in many ways is disingenuous, because
no one forced them to take the job.
Well, no one forced them to take the job, but here's the thing, that when they took the job, they noticed that there would be a schedule for the job. That when they won election in 2014, they knew right in 2014 when the next election day would be. Municipal politics isn't like federal or provincial parliamentary politics, where even though there is legislation in BC and also in Canada, federal government, there is legislation for fixed election dates. A government can fall sooner than then, or the head of the government, the elected head of the government, the Premier of BC or the Prime Minister of Canada, can always go to the Lieutenant Governor in BC or Governor General in Ottawa and say, can we have an election sooner, please, because we can no longer govern as is. We need a new mandate. We need to go to the populace and let the public decide what next, and then you can have an early election. Well, that doesn't exist, in municipal politics. There aren't early elections. So there are fixed elections. So when they got elected in 2014, they knew exactly when their term would be out in 2018. The new 4-year term as well. They used to be 3-year terms. They got an extra year in office. Extra year for the politicians. That meant one less year of accountability for the public to exact on those politicians. So these politicians are getting, who are leaving, are getting these bonus retirement payments. They already got a year bonus in office, and they already have the luxury of the lack of post-employment restrictions or cooling off period. This really is troubling. In fact, look over in Coquitlam. There's a councillor there named Terry Towner, who has actually gotten some good positive attention recently, because she has put this idea forward that the Union of BC Municipalities vote on it this fall, debate and vote on it this fall in their annual convention, that'll be in Whistler, that there be an independent agency struck, so that politicians no longer are the ones deciding if they should get raises, that there should be an independent body that should be the one that should ultimately decide yay or nay whether politicians should get raises, whether they're properly remunerated or not. We're not advocating that these people work for minimum wage at all. These people deserve, because they put their time in, they put their name forward, and for the betterment of the community. That's the way it should be. But there has to be some reason in this, that they should not be overcompensated, and they should not be made to feel too comfortable in their jobs, because they should always be fearful of the public asking questions. They should always be fearful of the media asking questions, because it's the public that pays their bills. It's the public that's their boss. And when these politicians in the municipal side of things get in office and start to act like the boss, that's when they really should find another line of work. If this isn't good enough for them, then they can always find another line of work.
If minimum wage was so good, how come politicians don't work for it?
That's a good question. The politicians, whatever level of government, really should. This is something that they should take every year. Get away from government for a week and actually go work in a minimum wage job to see how the other half lives. Get out there in the community, because the politicians, they talk a good game. They spend a lot of time in government debating, going to meetings, behind closed doors, in public meetings. They do their party fundraising. They go knocking on doors. We see more of them in our communities when it gets closer to an election, or when they want something, when they want their pet cause, more taxes raised for a pet cause, for instance. But we don't see enough of them actually getting out there and being one of us. Some of these politicians enjoy life as it is, because there are no term limits. So until there are term limits, maybe we should have this new idea that 1 week of the year politicians have to do community service work. Now, a lot of people say that they're already serving the community as politicians, but let's see them come back to each of their ridings, their home communities, the municipalities, maybe home neighborhoods, because there aren't wards in BC. Let's see them, roll up the sleeves, wash some dishes, take out some garbage, paint some walls, fix up some houses. Get out there with the people and reconnect with the people. Because part of the problem we have right now in the political system is that politicians are insulated by governments, whatever level it is, that are acting more like corporations. They have corporate communications teams to spin the message, to feed the message to the public. They're creating barriers and buffers between the politician and the public, and that only serves to increase the friction and the lack of trust. And we need to get back to basics. We need our politicians to better understand those that are their true employers. And if that was the case too, then the public would probably have more confidence and trust in the politicians to do their jobs if the politicians were more down to earth and more transparent and more accountable.
We'll have more with Bob Mackin right after the break.
I'm Greg Johnston, CEO of Carl Data Solutions, an industrial Internet of Things company that provides big data solutions for monitoring critical infrastructure. Carl Data offers machine learning and predictive analytics features through our cloud-based applications to deliver key asset-saving operational insights from massive amounts of data. Carl Data trades on the CSE symbol CRL and the pink symbol CDTAF. For more details on Carl Data, please visit carlsolutions.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're chatting with Bob Mackin. Bob, the other day I received a very nice, friendly robot call from Bill Good, asking me not to vote for proportional representation when they have a mail-in ballot later on in the summer here in British Columbia. What's your feeling about changing the voting system? Does it need to be changed? Should it be changed?
Well, it's a good debate to have because there's a lot of people that are saying that this voting system is outdated, and when you have a party that can achieve 40% popular support across the province, if you add up all the votes, they get 40% of support, and then they get whatever majority of seats they have, and then they get the 100% power in the Premier's office. It is not good in any way, shape, or form, especially when you've got what's essentially a duopoly. When we have here, except for the small green wedge, we've got on the left the NDP, which is the Labour Party with some environmentalists thrown in, and then you've got on the right you got the Free Enterprise Party. And these are essentially coalitions more than parties. A lot of political scientists would argue in BC, whereas other provinces have more defined party systems. But you really have a duopoly. You've got essentially what we've had for many generations, a Coke versus Pepsi, or a Labatt versus Molson situation. It's, you've got that in the United States as well with the Republicans versus Democrats. Maybe this is a way to further, take power away and to water down the whole political party system. Maybe this is a way to also encourage independence or groups of independents or coalitions of independents under a proportional representation system of some sort. But just to hang your hat on changing from first past the post to a proportional representation system and pretend that that's going to be the solution to all problems, I think is quite naive. As I said before, that just because you don't have first past the post anymore doesn't mean the public isn't going to be looking at the wrong end of the horse. You've got to do a lot of other things to change the democracy. I've mentioned before, term limits. That's one way of preventing politicians from becoming ingrained in the system and pretending like they're the boss. If you have term limits, it's a constant reminder of who the boss is. So term limits are one thing. An end to party discipline. And that can be achieved by lots of new checks and balances to restrict the power of the Premier's office, or federally the Prime Minister's office, or in some big municipalities the Mayor's office. You need to take away the party discipline. In many ways, you might need to take away the parties in order to do that. But you've got to have a system whereby the politicians are representing the will of those who live in their ridings instead of the other way around, where it seems like the politicians are acting as the regional sales managers for their leaders and representing what the government wants to impose on communities. There's a great documentary back in 2013 by Sean Holman called Whipped, which describes the history of the system here in British Columbia. So definitely proportional representation, if that does succeed in the referendum this fall, the mail-in referendum, it could bring some changes. But that can't be the only change that needs to be done to make our governments more transparent and accountable to the people. There's got to be a whole lot of other things that need to be done. And this is a time when we should be debating everything, getting the entire system of government on the table to decide where we go from here, because stand back and look at the system. The system doesn't work. It may work for those who have lots of money behind them, whether it's corporations or big unions, but a lot of people, average people, are looking at their tax bill and saying, I paid how much for this, and I don't get much of that, and there's cutbacks all the time, and our neighborhoods aren't as safe as we wish they were, and I think there's a lot of distance between the public and the government, and just by changing from proportional representation or to proportional representation from first past the post, it won't suddenly wave a magic wand and make things all better again. This has to be one step of many.
Bob, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you.
My guest has been Bob Mackin, award-winning investigative reporter and publisher of thebreaker.news, his website, thebreaker.ca. You're listening to the Goddard Report on TalkDigitalNetwork.com. If you have any questions for the show or our guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.